The courtroom fell silent as the dashcam footage began to play. The video showed a clear view of Dr. Williams' approach to the intersection, her turn signal blinking as she slowed down. The car came to a complete stop for 3 full seconds before proceeding carefully through the intersection. Officer Harrington's face tightened. He hadn't expected actual evidence. Most people didn't have dashcams, and even fewer thought to bring the footage to court. "As you can see, Your Honor," Maya said quietly, "I did make a complete stop at 8:17 a.m., which matches the time listed on the citation." Judge Robinson nodded. "The footage appears quite clear. Officer Harrington, would you like to comment on what we've just observed?" Harrington shifted uncomfortably. "The camera angle might make it look like a complete stop, but from my vantage point." "And where exactly was your vantage point, officer?" Judge Robinson interrupted. "I was parked on Pine Street, about 50 feet back from the intersection." Dr. Williams stepped forward. "Your Honor, I've prepared a diagram of the intersection." She placed a printed map on the evidence table. Officer Harrington just stated he was positioned here. She pointed to a spot on Pine Street. From this angle, his view would have been partially blocked by this row of hedges along Mrs. Chen's property. My dashcam has an unobstructed forward view. Officer Harrington's eyes narrowed. "Are you calling me a liar?" he challenged, his voice rising. "Officer," Judge Robinson warned, "watch your tone in my courtroom." Maya took a deep breath. "I'm not calling anyone anything, Your Honor. I'm simply presenting facts. The dashcam shows I stopped. The officer's view was potentially obstructed. Those are verifiable statements, not accusations." The calm professionalism in her voice made Officer Harrington's outbursts seem even more inappropriate by comparison. A few spectators in the gallery exchanged glances. "Dr. Williams, please continue with your testimony," Judge Robinson said. "Thank you, Your Honor." Maya straightened her shoulders. "I've been a neurologist at Memorial Hospital for 12 years. I take the same route to work every day. In all that time, I've never received a traffic citation because I'm extremely careful, especially in residential areas." She gestured toward the video that was paused on the screen. "As a doctor, I've treated far too many accident victims to ever take traffic safety lightly. When Officer Harrington pulled me over that morning, I was confused because I knew I had stopped completely." "And how would you describe your interaction with Officer Harrington?" Judge Robinson asked. Maya hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "The officer seemed dismissive from the start. He referred to me as honey and sweetheart, which felt unprofessional. When I tried to respectfully explain that I had stopped, he cut me off and suggested I pay more attention next time." Officer Harrington snorted. "I was being friendly. Some people are just too sensitive these days." Judge Robinson's gaze fixed on him. "Officer Harrington, you have not been given permission to speak. Interrupt again, and I will hold you in contempt." The officer fell silent, but his body language, arms crossed tightly across his chest, jaw working back and forth, broadcast his frustration loud and clear. "Dr. Williams, did Officer Harrington identify himself properly when he approached your vehicle?" Judge Robinson asked. "He did state his name and badge number, yes." "Did he explain your rights regarding the citation?" "He mentioned I could pay online or contest it in court, but his tone suggested contesting would be a waste of time." Judge Robinson made another note before continuing. "And you decided to contest it because—" "Because I knew I had stopped," Maya replied simply. "And because—" She paused, then decided to speak her mind, "because I believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect by public servants, including police officers." From his seat, Officer Harrington made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a scoff. Judge Robinson chose to ignore it this time, keeping her focus on Dr. Williams. "Is there anything else you'd like the court to know, Dr. Williams?" Maya nodded and retrieved one final document from her folder. "Yes, Your Honor. I've brought a letter from Mrs. Chen, whose property sits on that corner. She was gardening that morning and saw me stop at the sign. She's written a statement confirming my account." Judge Robinson accepted the letter and read it silently while the courtroom waited. Officer Harrington's leg bounced nervously under the table. "Thank you, Dr. Williams," Judge Robinson said at last, setting the letter aside. "I believe I have enough information to make my ruling on this matter." But before she could continue, she studied Officer Harrington's increasingly agitated demeanor. Something about his reaction seemed disproportionate to a simple traffic case. Her instincts, honed by years in the courtroom, told her there was more to this story. However, she added, "I'd like to take a 15-minute recess before delivering my verdict." She struck her gavel once. Court will resume at 10:45. As Judge Robinson rose and left the courtroom, Officer Harrington avoided Dr. Williams' eyes. For the first time that morning, he looked worried. Judge Robinson closed the door to her chambers and sat down at her computer. Something about Officer Harrington's behavior had set off alarm bells in her mind. His overreaction to being challenged, his dismissive attitude, the way he spoke to Dr. Williams, it all seemed like part of a pattern rather than an isolated incident. "Anthony," she called to her clerk, "can you pull Officer James Harrington's court appearance record for me and see if you can access any filed complaints through the police department's public portal?" Anthony nodded and set to work immediately. Judge Robinson sipped her water, reviewing her notes from the testimony. The evidence clearly supported Dr. Williams. The dashcam footage was unambiguous. Mrs. Chen's witness statement aligned with the video, and the officer's vantage point had been partially obstructed. But this case now felt like it might be about something bigger than a simple traffic stop. "Judge, I've got the information," Anthony said, placing a folder on her desk. "Officer Harrington has appeared in traffic court 78 times in the past year. That's nearly double the average for patrol officers in his district." Judge Robinson raised an eyebrow. "Any patterns?" Anthony hesitated. "Well, I took the liberty of breaking down the demographics. Of those 78 cases, 63 involved minority drivers. 47 were women." "I see," Judge Robinson said quietly. She opened the folder and began reviewing the contents. "And complaints?" 6 formal complaints filed in the last 3 years. None resulted in disciplinary action, but Anthony trailed off. "But what?" "They all share similar language. The complainants all mentioned feeling talked down to or disrespected. 2 specifically mentioned being called honey or sweetheart." Judge Robinson nodded slowly, turning the pages of the folder. Then she noticed something else, a note from Harrington's former supervisor, Lieutenant Rivera. The note documented a verbal counseling session regarding appropriate courtroom conduct and respectful interaction with judicial officials. "There's more here," she murmured, finding another internal memo. This one documented Officer Harrington's transferred from the West Side Precinct to his current assignment following an incident with a female superior officer. The details were vague, but the transfer was clearly not a promotion. Judge Robinson closed the folder and sat back in her chair. The 15-minute recess was nearly over. She had come into this case expecting a straightforward traffic hearing. Now she realized she was dealing with something much more significant, a pattern of behavior that needed to be addressed before it escalated further. "Thank you, Anthony," she said, rising from her desk. "I'll take this with me." When Judge Robinson re-entered the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Dr. Williams sat quietly, hands folded in her lap. Officer Harrington was leaning back in his chair, but his relaxed posture couldn't hide the worry in his eyes. "Court is back in session," announced the bailiff as everyone rose. Judge Robinson placed the folder on her bench and looked directly at Officer Harrington. "Officer Harrington, during the recess, I took the opportunity to review your record of court appearances and complaint history." The officer's face drained of color. "Your Honor, I don't see how that's relevant to this traffic case." "It became relevant when you displayed a pattern of disrespect in my courtroom," Judge Robinson replied calmly. "A pattern that, I've discovered, is well documented." She opened the folder and adjusted her glasses. "In the past 3 years, you've received 6 formal complaints regarding your conduct during traffic stops. In each case, the complainant, primarily women and people of color, described being spoken to in a condescending or disrespectful manner." Officer Harrington's face had turned from pale to red. "Those complaints were all dismissed." "They were not pursued administratively," Judge Robinson corrected him. "That's not the same as being dismissed on merit." She turned a page in the folder. "I'd also note that in 2021, Lieutenant Rivera documented a conversation with you about your courtroom conduct, specifically regarding how you address female judges." A few surprised murmurs rippled through the courtroom. Officer Harrington stared straight ahead, his jaw clenched tight. And in 2022, Judge Robinson continued, you were transferred from the West Side Precinct following an incident with Sergeant Thompson, who was your direct supervisor at the time. That was a mutual decision, Officer Harrington interrupted. A better fit for my patrol experience. Judge Robinson looked at him over the rim of her glasses. The documentation suggests otherwise, officer. She closed the folder and folded her hands on top of it. Officer Harrington, the pattern of behavior documented here, combined with what I've personally witnessed today, paints a concerning picture. You've demonstrated disrespect toward this court, toward Dr. Williams, and apparently toward many others you've encountered in your official capacity. Officer Harrington's face had turned a deep shade of red. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, seeming to realize that further protests would only dig his hole deeper. Dr. Williams watched the exchange with wide eyes. She had come to court expecting to fight a simple traffic ticket. She hadn't anticipated that her case might uncover something much more systemic. The courtroom was utterly silent as everyone waited for Judge Robinson's next words. The tension in the air was palpable, and all eyes were fixed on the judge's impassive face as she prepared to deliver her verdict. Judge Robinson took a moment to gather her thoughts. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. Officer Harrington stared straight ahead, his hands gripping the edge of the table. Dr. Williams sat perfectly still, her eyes fixed on the judge. In the matter of citation number 578B, Judge Robinson began, her voice clear and measured. I find in favor of Dr. Williams. The citation is dismissed. Dr. Williams let out a small sigh of relief, but Judge Robinson wasn't finished. However, there is a second matter that must be addressed. She turned her attention fully to Officer Harrington. Officer, your conduct in this courtroom today, combined with the pattern revealed in your record, requires a response from this court. Officer Harrington swallowed hard. His earlier swagger had completely vanished. Your Honor, if I may, he started. You may not, Judge Robinson cut him off firmly. You've had ample opportunity to speak, and you chose to use that time to display contempt for these proceedings and disrespect toward this court. She leaned forward slightly. Officer James Harrington, I am issuing a formal reprimand for your unprofessional conduct. This reprimand will be entered into the court record and forwarded to your commanding officer, Captain Wilson. Murmurs swept through the courtroom. A formal reprimand from a judge was no small matter for a police officer. It could affect future court testimony, performance reviews, and promotion opportunities. Additionally, Judge Robinson continued, I am ordering you to complete 40 hours of sensitivity training with a focus on respectful community interactions. This training must be completed within 60 days, and certification of completion must be provided to this court. Officer Harrington's face flushed darker. 40 hours? Your Honor, that would take up all my off-duty time for. Consider it time well spent, Judge Robinson replied coolly. Furthermore, I am ordering 20 hours of community service with the East Side Community Center. The East Side Community Center served a predominantly black neighborhood. Everyone in the courtroom understood the significance of this assignment. Your Honor, with all due respect, Officer Harrington tried again, his voice strained. I believe this goes beyond the scope of a traffic court ruling. Judge Robinson fixed him with a steady gaze. Officer Harrington, when you wear that uniform, you represent not just yourself, but the entire justice system. Your interactions with the public shape how citizens view that system. When you treat people with disrespect based on their gender or race, whether consciously or unconsciously, you undermine public trust in all of us who serve the law. She gestured toward her judicial robe. I wear this for the same reason you wear your uniform, as a symbol of duty and public service. That service must be rendered equally and respectfully to all citizens. Your record suggests you need a reminder of that fundamental principle. The courtroom was completely silent now. Even the usual shuffling of papers and whispered conversations had stopped. Everyone was watching the officer's reaction. For a long moment, Officer Harrington said nothing. His jaw worked back and forth as though chewing on words he wanted to say but knew better than to voice. Finally, he gave a stiff nod. Yes, Your Honor, he said, the words coming out clipped and tight. The sensitivity training must be completed through the department's approved program, which I believe is conducted by Dr. Luis Gonzalez, Judge Robinson added. As for the community service, you will report to Director Tanya Washington at the community center. She will assign your duties. She made a note in her file. You will provide bi-weekly progress reports to this court, and I expect the first report this Friday. Do you understand these instructions, Officer Harrington? Yes, Your Honor, he repeated, his voice barely audible this time. Judge Robinson nodded and turned to Dr. Williams. Dr. Williams, thank you for bringing this matter to the court's attention. Your citation is dismissed, and you are free to go. Dr. Williams stood. Thank you, Your Honor. She gathered her belongings, carefully avoiding eye contact with Officer Harrington. As she turned to leave, Judge Robinson added, and Dr. Williams? The dashcam was an excellent investment. I might consider getting one myself. A small smile crossed Dr. Williams' face as she nodded and exited the courtroom. Judge Robinson struck her gavel once. This case is closed. Next matter, please. Officer Harrington remained seated for a moment, seemingly stunned by what had just happened. His fellow officers in the gallery looked away uncomfortably, not wanting to meet his eyes. Finally, he stood and walked stiffly toward the exit. As the door closed behind him, the whispers in the courtroom grew louder. What had begun as a routine traffic case had turned into something much more significant, a rare moment of accountability that no one present was likely to forget. And in her black robe at the bench, Judge Robinson was already reviewing the next case file, her expression revealing nothing of the satisfaction she felt at knowing that sometimes, just sometimes, the system could work the way it was supposed to. The news about what happened in Judge Robinson's courtroom spread quickly through the police department. By the time Officer James Harrington returned to the precinct, most of his colleagues already knew. Some avoided eye contact as he walked to his desk. Others watched him with barely disguised curiosity. Harrington, my office now, Captain Wilson called from his doorway. James walked in slowly, bracing himself for what was coming. The captain gestured to a chair and closed the door behind them. Got a call from the courthouse, Captain Wilson said, sitting down heavily. Judge Robinson had quite a bit to say about you. James stared at the floor. It was just a traffic stop, Cap. The woman had an attitude. Save it, the captain cut him off. This isn't about one traffic stop, and you know it. The judge sent over your complaint history. 6 formal complaints in 3 years, all with the same pattern. He leaned forward. You want to tell me why I'm just hearing about this now? James shifted uncomfortably. Those complaints weren't sustained. They weren't investigated properly, Captain Wilson corrected him. And that's partly on me. I should have looked closer when you transferred in. The captain picked up a piece of paper from his desk. 40 hours of sensitivity training and 20 hours at the East Side Community Center. He shook his head. Judge Robinson doesn't mess around. It's ridiculous, James muttered. All this over a rolling stop. Captain Wilson's expression hardened. No, Harrington. All this over a pattern of behavior that's finally caught up with you. I've already spoken with Dr. Gonzalez about fitting you into the sensitivity training program. You start tomorrow. Tomorrow? But I'm scheduled for patrol. Not anymore. You're on desk duty until further notice. James felt his face grow hot. This is unbelievable. Nobody ever cared before. The captain studied him for a long moment. And that's the problem, isn't it? Nobody cared enough to stop you, until now. 2 days later, James pulled his personal car into the parking lot of the East Side Community Center. He'd chosen to come in plain clothes rather than his uniform. The last thing he wanted was to draw attention to himself. Inside, the center was buzzing with activity. Kids played basketball in the gym while older teens worked at computers in a side room. James hesitated in the entrance, feeling out of place. Can I help you? Asked a woman with kind eyes and gray streaks in her hair. I'm supposed to report to Director Washington, he said stiffly. The woman smiled. That's me. You must be Officer Harrington. James nodded uncomfortably. Follow me, she said, leading him to a small office. Judge Robinson called me personally about your community service hours. She gestured for him to sit. We have several programs that could use help. What are your skills besides police work? James hadn't expected this question. I coached my nephew's Little League team for a few years. Director Washington's face brightened. Perfect. Our youth sports program lost a volunteer coach last month. How do you feel about basketball instead of baseball? Before James could answer, a lanky teenage boy stuck his head in the door. Miss Tanya, the printer's jammed again, and Mr. Paul isn't here to fix it. I can take a look, James found himself saying. I used to work a night before joining the force. Director Washington raised an eyebrow, then nodded. Go with Kevin here. If you can fix that printer, you'll be everyone's hero today. 20 minutes later, James had the printer working again. The teens waiting for their resumes thanked him with genuine smiles, not knowing who he was or why he was there. Over the following weeks, a strange thing happened. James started looking forward to his hours at the community center. He fixed computers, coached basketball, and even helped some kids with their homework. Nobody there treated him with the fearful deference he was used to receiving in uniform. They just saw him as James, the guy who could shoot three-pointers and fix the temperamental copying machine. Meanwhile, the sensitivity training sessions with Dr. Gonzalez were uncomfortable but eye-opening. For the first time, James was forced to examine his own behavior through others' eyes. He began to recognize patterns in himself that he'd been blind to before. The hardest part, he admitted during one session, is realizing I've been doing this for years and thought it was normal. 3 months later, James found himself back in the courthouse for a traffic case. As he waited in the hallway, he spotted a familiar figure walking toward him. Judge Robinson nodded briefly. Officer Harrington. Your Honor, he replied, standing straighter. I completed the training program last month, and I'm still volunteering at the center, even though my required hours ended weeks ago. Something that might have been surprise flickered across Judge Robinson's face. Is that so? James nodded. Kevin, one of the teens, is applying to community college. I'm helping him with his essays. I see, Judge Robinson said, studying him with those penetrating eyes. And has the experience been valuable, Officer Harrington? James thought about the question carefully. 6 months ago, he would have given a sarcastic answer. Now he found himself speaking honestly. It changed my perspective, Your Honor. I hadn't realized how I was coming across to people, especially people who don't look like me. He hesitated, then added, I needed that wake-up call. Judge Robinson's expression remained neutral, but she nodded slowly. Self-reflection is a powerful tool, officer. I'm pleased to hear you've made good use of it. As she continued down the hallway, James watched her go, remembering how angry he'd been that day in court. The anger was gone now, replaced by something he hadn't expected, gratitude. That evening at the community center, as he watched Kevin sink a perfect three-pointer and turn with a grin seeking approval, James realized something important. The judge's verdict hadn't been a punishment after all. It had been an opportunity, one that had made him not just a better officer, but a better person.